Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel, and if you're here for the very first time, you're so welcome. I'm Jane and my husband Mike is behind the camera. We're British, early retirees, debt and mortgage free, and living a thrifty, frugal and money saving life here in Brittany in northwest France. And every Wednesday we open our home, invite you into the lounge, into the sofa for a midweek money chat. Let's take a look what we're going to talk about today. We had rising prices in 21. We saw it coming, didn't we? And throughout the entire of 22, just as we head into December, we have continued rising prices all throughout the year. There's been no respite. There's been no return to any prices. They've just continued to rise. And we know that prices are going to continue to rise even further in 2023. So today's topic is about inflation fatigue. So let's talk about this inflation fatigue and why these prices continue to increase. Energy prices are still extremely high. Fuel prices are still extremely high. Food prices are still extremely high. We had horrible droughts here in Europe. We know in other countries they've had horrible floods, and all of that has had a knock-on effect with shortages of food. Whenever there's a shortage of anything, we know prices increase. We know the shortage of base materials, whether it comes to materials to make a car, to make parts of a car, whether it's building materials. We have seen so many of these things are in very short supply, and prices where they are available have doubled. I'm looking at my notes here of things that have also increased. Taxation has drastically increased. In many countries across the world, you are seeing higher taxes. We are seeing your insurances increase. Our insurances here have increased. In lots of countries, we are paying more for insurance. Health insurance, whether we buy a pair of glasses or have our teeth fixed, we are paying more for it. We're seeing more, we're having to pay more for anything that we buy. So if you eat out, you'll know you've got to pay more for it. If they're paying more for energy and they're paying more for their materials, we're having to put up the price of everything. And it's not getting better soon, and it's going to continue to be more expensive in 2023. And we're not calling it inflation fatigue for nothing. It's exhausting. So what does inflation fatigue look like for people out there? And I think I'm going to start by saying what we are seeing is very much, in many countries, a shrinking middle class of people who could have once have afforded many things, just normal everyday things, are now having to make real cutbacks. So we are seeing people not able to put their central heating on in the way they used to. They may have had it on for a couple of hours in the morning and a few hours in the evening. They're really having to cut back on that. And whereas once upon a time they would have a warm house, use the tumble dryer, just put the oven on whenever they wanted to, they're not able to do that. And that's the middle class people. People with low wages are unable to do those things. They are unable to put the oven on, unable to put the central heating on, unable to have hot water on demand. Let's have a look at other things that it might look like. People who once upon a time would have eaten out a few times a week, they're now cooking at home. People who would have once gone out to eat at lunchtime, and I know you think, oh, go out to eat at lunchtime. Here in France, the main meal of the day is lunchtime. It was very normal for workers to go out and eat at lunchtime. It's going to be increasingly difficult for people to do that. Referring to my notes here, people are going to be unable to do any upgrades on their home. If you go to DIY stores, for example, say you want to buy a new sink unit for your bathroom, you go into the stores and there's one of two things. There's very, very little choice for two reasons. They can't get the goods, or they're not stocking the goods because people are not buying them. So I'm looking at my notes here again. So people aren't socialising as much. So that's another thing that inflation fatigue is going to look like. People are going to start really missing out on cultural and social events. They're going to be unable to go to the fundraising events. They won't be able to go to the sporting events. And it's not just going to be for a while. It's going to continue as prices increase. That people are going to be unable to afford to do these things. Less and less people will be having their nails done or their hair done or any beauty treatments. They're going to be buying a lot less clothes. And at the bottom, that's the middle class people who can afford to make some choices and make some cutbacks. But when you look at people with low incomes, people on pensions, people on benefits, they aren't making any of those choices anymore. It's not like, oh, I might be able to go to Poundland and buy a little bit of nail varnish once in a while. There'll be no choices like that. Literally, those choices will be taken away from them. As that inflation fatigue sets in and it goes on longer and longer and longer, people are going to be making more and more difficult decisions about the things that they can no longer afford. This section of the video should really come with a rant alert, because people have got selective memories, haven't they? And I know, because you write it and you'll be saying it and you'll be thinking it. Well, people went through terrible times in the past. People lived through the depression. People lived through wartime. People lived through rationing. People lived through inflation and very high prices in the past. And I think we really do have selective memories. I know I've got selective memory. When I look back at my childhood and remember the good parts, I brush aside the bad parts, and I'm sure that many people do that with their memories when they say, oh, but we were okay, we had ice on the inside of our window, we often didn't have much to eat, and they brush that aside. And the parts of the selective memory that we so easily forget are the fact that people used to be shamed for being poor. People were shamed and discriminated against for being poor. People were shamed and went through deprivation through being poor. And there was an awful lot that went on behind closed doors that was unmentioned. It was unmentioned that people were going hungry. It was unmentioned that people didn't have any heating or didn't have any hot water or couldn't wash their clothes. So let's not kid ourselves that those things won't happen again, because they're already happening. People are already being shamed for being poor, as if everyone can go and get a side hustle, as if everybody can live where there's pizza delivery, where everyone can go out and do something to earn some more money. It's not that easy, and it's not possible everywhere. Here's an example in the UK. If you cannot afford to use electricity in the UK, you cannot afford to wash your clothes. And people say, oh, but you can wash your clothes by hand. You can never wring them out to get them dry enough to hang them to dry. And hang them to dry in an unheated house. You can get rain for 5, 6, 7 weeks at a time in some areas of the UK and here in Northern Europe. So it's not so easy for people to say, oh, but everybody can wash their clothes and stay clean. And people who say things like that are very easy to shame people. So let's take off those rose-tinted glasses and remember that we have selective memories. And when we did, any of us, get through hard times in the past, let us never forget that people will be going through those again. So we know inflation is going to continue, we know prices are going to increase, and like I often say in these videos, it's a case of assume brace position. It really is, and it's what can we do? So let's just run through a few of these, and if I miss any, if there are any coping strategies that I miss, please leave them in a comment below. We're all going to have to get used to ways of keeping our house at a lower temperature, and therefore keeping ourselves warm on a budget. We need to investigate ways that we can do that, whether it's with blankets, with insulating our windows, putting up 2 sets of curtains, getting another set from the charity shop and sticking it up alongside of those. Using hot water bottles against our backs when we're sitting watching TV is just another way of keeping warm. Ventilating our houses as well is something else that's really, really important when we have not got them as warm as we used to. On any dry day at all, we need to be ventilating our houses. It might seem counterintuitive to open the windows and let the air in, but it is so important. When it comes to matters of food, those people out there who might be watching this thinking, well, I'm bored of this, really start looking for some affordable recipes, even if you just have a rotating set of recipes and a few treats once in a while. Those takeaway recipes, whether it's homemade fish and chips, homemade pizza or homemade curry, that you can slip into the menu plan once every couple of weeks. Embracing secondhand, and this is a really important thing that I want to mention here. When you're buying stuff at the moment from Facebook Marketplace, or you're buying things from a garage sale or a car boot sale, please remember the fact that people might be selling that stuff to pay bills. And this is really not the time, not the case for everybody. If it's within your buying power, if you're buying stuff secondhand, it's not to haggle. If they're selling something at a reasonable price, whether it's a secondhand pushchair or a buggy or a bicycle or a piece of furniture or an item of clothing, and it's a reasonable price, don't haggle, pay that price. Somebody really might need that money at the moment. The other thing that we need to look at doing is socializing for free, and also inviting friends in who we might think to ourselves, I don't think they've got any money at the moment, and we need to give them a no pressure solution to this. Like say, look, come round, I'm making a big veggie lasagna, I'm going to do some homemade garlic bread and a few chips. Come on round and just bring yourself and the kids on a Saturday afternoon and we'll play a few board games. And doing things like that, being able to say to friends, look, why don't we all come round, watch the football together, or watch a sporting event together, or watch a movie together, or watch something together. It's only heat in one room then. And look, everybody just bring round a bit of food, bring round a few sausage rolls, or bring round a bit of food. And it's finding ways of being able to be social without it costing much money, or warm, or eating, or any of those things without it costing too much money. And like I said, brace yourself, assume brace position, because this is not going to get any better soon. If you've been here before, you know that in any of my videos, I do like to be reflective. And I want to end with a reflection as well, that even in these terrible times with inflation fatigue that's going to go on and on and on, that there's still things that we can do in a very small way that can make a difference. If we go through the food supplies that we've got, those food stocks that we've built up, I'm absolutely sure we can find things that we think, really shouldn't have bought that, I don't think we're going to eat that, I don't think we like that, and we can take those items out and they're in before their best before date, and we can donate them to a food bank. We've got items of clothing that we don't want, we can have a declutter, and we can look for places where we can donate those clothes, where people who have no money can come and get them for nothing. There are now clothing banks. We know that if we have children and we have items that maybe that we've had secondhand, that we can now pass on, toys, whether it's children's clothing, whether it's items of nursery items from a cot to a high chair to a pushchair, that can be handed on to people who can then give them away for nothing. Same with items from, whether you have tools. It's really important that people have tools in their house, and if you have them that you can give away, they can too get passed on. So we're not just seeing food banks, we're seeing clothing banks, toy banks, baby banks, furniture banks as well. So we can make a difference. If there are things that we don't want, and let's face it, we could all do with a declutter, we can pass those on, and they can in turn be passed on to people who have no means at all of getting anything. So let's reflect on that even now, those of us who have a little bit, we can still help in a way. Thanks everybody for watching. Now we love your comments and we read every single one of them. We'd really love to hear today of your strategies for coping with inflation fatigue. Because like we said in the video, this isn't going to get any better any sooner. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.